Ethan stared at the glowing holographic screen in disbelief. He had read the message 3 times, and each time it seemed more surreal than the last. You have been assigned a life partner for companionship and support. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his eyes. His hand trembled slightly. He had always been independent, proud of his skills as an explorer and colonist. The idea that someone or something was now officially assigned to him felt like a violation of his freedom, and yet, the notice had come from the Galactic Council itself, and refusal was not an option. He had expected the partner to be human, a fellow colonist who could share the workload, maybe even friendship, but the Council had made it very clear that humans weren't always paired with humans. The program aimed to ensure survival in unpredictable star systems. Some assignments were traditional, some unconventional. Ethan had heard rumors of alien companions, beings from other planets specifically chosen to balance human weaknesses. He had dismissed them as exaggerated stories until now. A soft chime sounded in the room. The door slid open, and a small figure stepped in. Ethan's jaw dropped. Standing before him was a tiny alien, no taller than 3 feet, with delicate limbs and bright, sparkling eyes that seemed to glow with an inner light. Her skin shimmered faintly, like the surface of a pearl under sunlight. She wore a simple outfit that allowed for movement, and despite her small frame, she carried herself with a confident, almost regal posture. "Hello," she said in a melodic voice. "I'm Lyra. I've been assigned to be your companion." She smiled, and it was disarming, warm and genuine. Ethan blinked. Lyra tilted her head, examining him with curious eyes. "Humans? No. You were assigned me. I am trained for this, and I assure you, I am very good at my work. Besides," she added with a mischievous sparkle in her eyes, "I think we will get along just fine." Ethan rubbed the back of his neck, feeling awkward. "I don't know if I mean, I'm used to working alone. I don't need help." Lyra laughed softly. The sound was light, like wind chimes in the breeze. "That is what all humans say at first," she said. "But humans are clever and strong, and together, we are stronger. You will see." Before Ethan could respond, a holographic projection appeared in the center of the room. A stern-faced enforcer from the Galactic Council appeared. "Ethan Carter, your assignment is binding. Your survival and success in this colony may depend on your cooperation with Lyra. Resistance will not be tolerated. Begin your partnership immediately." With that, the hologram flickered out. Ethan's stomach churned. He felt trapped, cornered by duty and protocol. And yet, when he looked at Lyra, he noticed something unexpected. She wasn't imposing or demanding. There was no hint of superiority. No agenda but help and companionship. She was small, almost fragile-looking, yet she radiated confidence. It was unsettlingly charming. Over the next hour, Ethan and Lyra prepared for their first field test together. The colony world was unforgiving, filled with dense forests, shifting terrain, and strange creatures that could appear without warning. Lyra moved with ease, inspecting the maps and equipment as if she had done this 1,000 times before. Ethan, by contrast, felt clumsy and rigid. "Here," Lyra said, handing him a compact survival scanner. "This will help you detect life signs and hazards. It's simple to use, but it can save your life." Ethan took it reluctantly. "I've survived alone for years without one of these." Lyra smiled knowingly. "And you might continue surviving alone. But we don't want to risk unnecessary mistakes. Think of me as insurance." The small remark made Ethan smirk despite himself. There was something oddly reassuring about her, even if he would never admit it aloud. Their journey began at dawn the next day. Ethan led the way, machete in hand, cutting through thick undergrowth. Lyra followed easily, her small size allowing her to move quickly and silently. Every now and then, she would pause and touch a tree or stone, listening to the subtle vibrations of the forest. Ethan watched, intrigued and slightly skeptical. Do you Always know what's around you? He asked. Lyra nodded. Partly. I can sense changes in the environment, detect approaching creatures, and even understand the moods of some local wildlife. It is part of my training. But you, Ethan, are clever and strong. We make a good team if you let me help. Ethan grunted. He didn't answer. He wasn't ready to admit that maybe, just maybe, he needed assistance. Hours into the trek, the forest seemed to grow darker, the trees taller and more twisted. Strange noises echoed through the air, low growls, rustling leaves, and distant screeches that made his pulse quicken. Ethan's instincts screamed caution, but he was beginning to notice a strange calmness in Lyra. She moved confidently, almost as if she belonged here more than he did. Suddenly, a shadow darted between the trees. Ethan barely had time to react before a creature lunged at him. A four-legged predator, with glimmering teeth and thick, scaly hide. He swung his machete, but the beast was fast. Lyra reacted instantly, leaping onto a low branch and releasing a strange burst of light that disoriented the creature. Ethan seized the moment to strike, and the predator fled into the underbrush. Ethan's heart pounded as he turned to Lyra. How? What was that? Lyra landed gracefully on the ground, brushing herself off. A little trick from my world. I told you, we're stronger together. Ethan stared at her. He had expected an alien companion to be awkward or burdensome, but she had just saved his life with ease. The thought was both humbling and uncomfortable. They continued through the forest, and slowly, Ethan began to see more of Lyra's strengths. She could detect edible plants, avoid quicksand, and even anticipate weather changes before they occurred. She moved with a fluidity that Ethan found mesmerizing. Despite his pride, he felt a grudging respect building in his chest. That night, they set up camp near a small river. Lyra prepared a simple meal from foraged ingredients, demonstrating techniques that Ethan had never considered. The food was simple, yet surprisingly flavorful. And Ethan found himself enjoying it, not just the taste, but the process of sharing a moment of peace with her. So, do you always do this? Save lives, cook meals, read minds of wildlife? Ethan asked, a hint of teasing in his voice. Lyra laughed. Not minds, just life signs. But yes, I am trained to help, and I enjoy it. It is fulfilling. And you, Ethan, are learning to trust someone other than yourself. That is rare among humans. Ethan frowned slightly. I don't know if I'm ready for that yet. That is okay, Lyra said softly. We have time. Survival is patient. And so am I. She smiled, small and comforting, and Ethan felt a strange warmth spread through him. As he stared at the stars that night, reflected in the river's surface, Ethan realized something unexpected. He hadn't asked for a companion, yet here she was, small, cheerful, and completely capable. And despite his stubborn pride, he felt a spark of hope. Perhaps having Lyra by his side wasn't a limitation, but a new kind of strength. He didn't say anything, not yet. But for the first time since he had received the assignment, Ethan allowed himself to imagine that this partnership might work. And more than that, he wondered if it might be better than anything he had expected. When sleep finally came, Ethan found himself listening to Lyra's soft breathing, oddly reassured by her presence. The tiny alien had entered his life unexpectedly, but he realized that perhaps some surprises were worth embracing. And deep down, he knew that tomorrow, when the forest called them back into its wild, unpredictable embrace, he would face it differently, not alone, but with someone who had chosen to stand beside him, no matter how small she was. The morning light filtered through the dense canopy, casting mottled patterns across the forest floor. Ethan stirred from his sleep, feeling the weight of the previous day's events pressing on him. For the first time, he was acutely aware of Lyra's presence beside him. She was awake already, sitting cross-legged on a smooth rock, eyes closed, listening to the forest. When she opened them, she smiled warmly at him. "Morning, Ethan," she said. "The forest is calm. Good time to practice your tracking skills." Ethan groaned softly. "Tracking? I survived on my own for years." I don't need lessons. Lyra tilted her head, unfazed. You survived, yes. But survival is more than getting through a day. It is understanding the world, predicting danger, and working with others. Today, we practiced together. He hesitated. Pride was a stubborn thing, and yet he felt a spark of curiosity. Perhaps she could teach him something he didn't already know. He followed her silently as they moved deeper into the forest, the undergrowth crunching softly beneath their boots. Lyra's small size and agile movements amazed him. She darted between trees with ease, her eyes constantly scanning the environment. There, she whispered suddenly, pointing to a cluster of plants. Those berries are safe. Those over there, poisonous. Ethan crouched to examine them. How do you know? Observation, Lyra said simply. And years of training. A living world leaves subtle signs. Color, smell, texture. Everything has a story. Ethan frowned, realizing she was right. He had relied on instinct and experience for years, but he had never thought to read the forest in such a detailed way. He followed her, attempting to notice the subtle hints she pointed out, slowly beginning to understand the value of her guidance. Hours passed as they explored. They tracked small creatures, crossed streams, and avoided areas where the earth was unstable. Each step of the way, Ethan noticed Lyra's quiet confidence. She never hesitated, never panicked, and yet she moved with a lightness that seemed almost magical. Ethan found himself marveling at her abilities, though he would never admit it aloud. Then, without warning, the forest grew darker. The wind shifted, carrying a faint metallic scent. Ethan froze. Something's wrong, he muttered. Scanning the trees, Lyra's eyes narrowed. Predators, close, fast, stay behind me. Before Ethan could react, two large creatures burst from the underbrush. They were taller than a human. With thick, scaly hides and sharp claws, their eyes glowed in the dim light, and their growls reverberated through the trees. Ethan instinctively raised his machete, but Lyra was already moving. She darted between the creatures, using her small size to her advantage. One of the creatures swiped at her, but she leapt over it effortlessly, landing on a low branch. She extended her hands and released a small, bright burst of energy, momentarily blinding the predators. Ethan didn't hesitate. He charged, striking at the creature's legs, forcing them back. Together, their movements created a rhythm of survival. Ethan's strength and Lyra's agility working in harmony. The predators, disoriented and frustrated, finally retreated into the shadows. Ethan's chest heaved, sweat dripping down his face. He looked at Lyra, who landed gracefully beside him, not a hint of fear on her small face. You see, she said softly, we are stronger together. He shook his head in disbelief. You're incredible, Lyra shrugged, almost shyly. I do what I must. And you did well too. You are brave, Ethan. Strong. But even strength needs guidance sometimes. They set up a temporary camp in a sheltered area as the forest grew quiet again. Ethan watched Lyra gather firewood, her movements precise and efficient. For the first time, he felt a strange mix of gratitude and respect for this tiny alien who had been assigned to him. He realized that he had underestimated her. And perhaps he had underestimated the idea of partnership itself. As night fell, the forest transformed. Strange creatures moved in the shadows, and the sounds of distant rivers and falling leaves created an eerie symphony. Lyra sat next to him, her small form illuminated by the firelight. She handed him a simple meal she had prepared from foraged ingredients. The food was basic, yet the flavors were vibrant and satisfying. You don't have to rely only on strength, Lyra said quietly. Knowledge, patience, observation, these are also survival tools. And sometimes, trust is the most important tool of all. Ethan chewed thoughtfully, his pride making him hesitate to respond. Trust? In someone else? Yes, Lyra said, looking into the flames. Trust in someone who has proven themselves. Trust that you are not alone. It is not weakness, it is wisdom. He glanced at her, studying her small, determined face. He had faced countless dangers alone, but for the first time, he wondered if his survival might be better with someone by his side, someone he could rely on, and who could rely on him. The days that followed were a mixture of lessons, exploration, and quiet companionship. Lyra taught him how to read the forest, understand alien creatures, and predict environmental changes. Ethan, in turn, shared his experience in survival tactics, combat training, and strategy. Slowly, a rhythm developed between them. They moved as a team, each complementing the other's strengths. One afternoon, while navigating a particularly dense section of forest, they came across a ravine filled with rushing water. A fallen tree served as a makeshift bridge. Ethan tested it carefully, but the wood groaned under his weight. "Here, I'll go first," Lyra said. Ethan protested, but she moved without waiting. She darted across the narrow tree trunk with ease, stopping at the other side to gesture for him to follow. Ethan's heart pounded as he carefully crossed, but he made it safely. "You make it look so easy," he said, trying to hide his anxiety. "It is easy if you trust the ground and your own abilities," she replied. "And if you trust me." Ethan didn't answer immediately, but he felt a warmth in his chest. Trust. It was a strange, foreign concept for him. And yet with Lyra, it seemed natural. He realized that her presence made challenges less daunting, dangers more manageable, and even the forest itself feel less threatening. By the end of the week, Ethan's perception of Lyra had shifted dramatically. What had started as an assignment, a duty imposed upon him, had transformed into something unexpected. He admired her intelligence, her courage, and her unwavering optimism. He also realized that he had begun to enjoy her company, her laughter, and the way she viewed the world with fresh, vibrant eyes. One evening, as they sat by a campfire, Ethan spoke quietly. "Lyra, I didn't expect to feel this way about working with you." Lyra smiled softly. "And how do you feel, really?" Ethan hesitated. I don't know. Maybe safer, stronger, and maybe I enjoy having someone around. I didn't think I would, but I do." "My 9. Lyra's smile widened. "That is good. That is the first step. Survival is easier when you are not alone. And life can be richer too." Ethan nodded, staring into the flames. He had spent years surviving alone, relying solely on himself. And now, for the first time, he allowed himself to imagine a different way of living. One where companionship, trust, and partnership were not weaknesses, but strengths. As night deepened, the forest around them settled into quiet darkness. Ethan felt a strange calmness, a sense of security he hadn't known in years. Lyra, tiny and petite, sat close enough to feel the warmth of his presence, and yet not overbearing. She had become his partner in the truest sense, someone whose skills, courage, and optimism balanced his own. He realized then that the assignment from the Galactic Council, which had initially felt like a burden, might have been a blessing in disguise. Lyra's small smile, her quiet confidence, and her unwavering support had begun to change the way he viewed not just survival, but life itself. When sleep finally claimed him that night, Ethan allowed himself a rare thought. Perhaps this partnership, strange and unexpected as it was, could become something extraordinary. And deep down, he knew that tomorrow, when the forest demanded their courage once more, he would face it not alone, but with Lyra by his side, ready to face whatever challenges the alien world might throw at them. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of damp earth and distant flowers. Ethan and Lyra stood at the edge of a canyon that stretched wider and deeper than any landscape Ethan had seen before. The Galactic Council had called this a survival trial, a test for humans and their assigned partners. The challenge was simple in words but impossible in practice. Retrieve a rare crystal from the canyon floor, where danger waited at every step. Ethan scanned the steep cliffs and jagged rocks below. The crystal shimmered faintly, almost like a heartbeat of light at the bottom of the canyon. He felt the familiar twinge of fear, mixed with anticipation. Lyra, standing beside him, was already observing the terrain, her small frame tense but poised. "Are you ready?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with determination. Ethan exhaled slowly. "As ready as I'll ever be. But we'll have to rely on each other this time." Lyra nodded. "Exactly. Survival is teamwork, Ethan. I've seen humans struggle alone. We won't make that mistake." They began their descent carefully. Lyra moved with practiced ease, scouting ahead and pointing out loose rocks and weak ledges. Ethan followed, adjusting his movements to match hers. For the first time, he noticed how her petite form could slip through spaces he could not, how her eyes detected danger he might overlook. He realized that working together didn't diminish his skill. It amplified it. Halfway down, the first real threat appeared. A cluster of native creatures, small but aggressive, emerged from the shadows. They had 6 legs, armored bodies, and sharp pincers. Ethan raised his machete, but Lyra stopped him with a hand on his arm. "Wait," she whispered. "Observe. They are territorial, not predatory. We can move without fighting if we time it right." Ethan watched as she mimicked their movements, predicting their shifts and pauses. Following her lead, they moved slowly and silently, navigating through the creature's territory without drawing attention. Ethan marveled at her skill. Every step she took was precise, every decision calculated. When they reached a narrow ledge above a fast-moving river, Ethan felt his confidence waver. One wrong move could send them tumbling into the water below. Lyra crouched beside him, her small hand brushing against his arm. "Trust me," she said softly. Ethan nodded, though his stomach twisted with nerves. With Lyra guiding him, he inched forward, testing the stone beneath his boots. Step by step, they crossed the treacherous path, the roar of the river echoing in their ears. By the time they reached the opposite side, Ethan felt a surge of relief and gratitude. "See?" Lyra said with a triumphant grin. "You did well. We did well." Ethan allowed himself a small smile. "Yeah, we did." The canyon floor was a maze of jagged rocks and shallow lava pits, a reminder of the planet's volatile nature. The crystal lay atop a pedestal of black stone, shimmering brighter as they approached. But as they neared it, a deep rumble shook the ground. Ethan's eyes widened as a massive creature emerged from the shadows. It had thick scales, glowing eyes, and a massive tail capable of crushing anything in its path. Ethan froze. We have to fight it?" Lyra's eyes narrowed. "Not unless we have to. Follow my lead." She darted to the side, drawing the creature's attention. Ethan's heart pounded as he moved cautiously, looking for opportunities. Lyra led the massive predator into a narrow corridor of rocks, where its size became a disadvantage. Ethan realized she was using the terrain to their advantage. With careful timing, he distracted the creature momentarily, allowing Lyra to slip past and reach the crystal. "Grab it!" Ethan shouted. Lyra reached out with her small, agile hands, seizing the crystal. It pulsed with energy, warm and vibrant. As she lifted it, the creature roared in frustration and lunged. Ethan reacted instinctively, pushing Lyra out of harm's way while striking the creature with his machete. The clash sent sparks flying, and the ground trembled beneath them. Together, they fought strategically, combining Ethan's strength and Lyra's speed. Each move was synchronized, almost like a dance. The massive predator, overwhelmed and confused, eventually retreated into the shadows, leaving the canyon floor eerily silent once more. Ethan exhaled, chest heaving. "That was insane," Lyra smiled, holding the crystal high. "We made it. And you see what happens when we work together?" Ethan nodded, still catching his breath. "Yeah, I do. You're amazing, Lyra. I don't know if I could have done this without you." "And I couldn't have done it without you," Lyra replied. "You are brave, strong, and quick-thinking. Together, we are unstoppable." As they began the ascent back up the canyon, Ethan felt a new sense of respect and trust for Lyra. Her petite frame hid incredible strength, intelligence, and courage. She wasn't just an assigned companion, she was a true partner, someone whose presence made him better, stronger, and more capable. Halfway up, a sudden storm rolled in. Dark clouds filled the sky, and lightning crackled across the canyon walls. The wind howled, carrying debris and rain that made the rocks slippery. Ethan's heart raced. One wrong step could undo all their hard work. "Hold my hand," Lyra said, her small hand reaching for his. "We'll go together." Ethan hesitated, then took her hand. It was small, but firm and steady. Her touch gave him an unexpected calm. Together, they moved carefully, each step a test of balance and coordination. The storm raged around them, but they focused on each other, guiding and supporting one another. At the top of the canyon, soaked and exhausted, they collapsed onto a flat rock. Lyra held the crystal between them, its light faintly illuminating their tired faces. Ethan looked at her and realized something profound. I used to think needing someone was a weakness," he admitted quietly. "But with you, I see it's not. It's strength. We're stronger together." Lyra's eyes shone. "Exactly. Humans often forget that strength comes in many forms. Alone, you are strong. Together, you are unstoppable." Ethan smiled, feeling a sense of camaraderie he had never known. The trial had tested their physical abilities, their courage, and their strategy. But more importantly, it had tested their trust and partnership. They had survived not because of one person, but because they had worked together. As the storm began to pass, Ethan and Lyra made their way back to the colony, the crystal safely in hand. The experience had changed him. He no longer saw Lyra as just an assigned companion. She was a partner, a friend, and perhaps even something more. By the time they reached the colony gates, word of their success had spread. The Galactic Council congratulated them, praising their teamwork, skill, and ingenuity. Ethan felt a surge of pride, not just in completing the trial, but in learning the true meaning of partnership. That night, as they sat in their shared quarters, drying off and tending to minor scrapes and bruises, Ethan finally spoke openly. "Lyra, I was wrong about this assignment. I thought it would be a burden, something forced on me. But, having you with me, I feel stronger, safer, and happier." Lyra smiled softly, her small hand resting on his arm. "That is good to hear, Ethan. I hoped you would see it. Life is not meant to be faced alone. And sometimes, the right partner can make all the difference." Ethan looked at her, studying her delicate features, her bright eyes, and the confident way she carried herself. He felt a warmth in his chest, a realization that this partnership was no longer about obligation, it was about choice, respect, and trust. For the first time since he had received the assignment, Ethan allowed himself to imagine a future where he and Lyra explored the stars together, faced challenges side by side, and relied on each other not because they had to, but because they wanted to. As sleep came again, Ethan felt a rare sense of peace. The canyon had tested them, the storm had challenged them, and the predators had pushed them to their limits. But together, they had survived. Together, they had proven that humans and their assigned companions, no matter how small or unusual, could achieve greatness when they trusted one another. And deep down, Ethan knew that whatever the Galactic Council assigned next, he would face it with confidence, courage, and the tiny, spirited alien who had become so much more than just his partner. The sun rose slowly over the alien colony, painting the sky with streaks of orange and gold. Ethan stood at the edge of the platform, looking down at the bustling settlement below. For weeks, he had navigated treacherous forests, survived storms, and faced creatures he had never imagined. Yet now, as he watched the colonists moving about their daily tasks, he felt a sense of calm and purpose he had never known. Lyra stood beside him, small and cheerful, her eyes reflecting the morning light. "You look thoughtful," she said softly, nudging his arm with her shoulder. Ethan smiled faintly. I'm just thinking about everything. About us. About how much has changed since we first met. Lyra tilted her head, her small face curious. Change is part of life, Ethan. And sometimes, change brings good things. He nodded, thinking about the journey they had shared. What had begun as an assignment, a duty imposed by the Galactic Council, had grown into something much more meaningful. He had learned to trust, to rely on someone else without feeling weak, and to appreciate companionship in a way he had never imagined. Lyra had proven herself time and again. Agile, clever, courageous, and unwaveringly optimistic. She had saved his life more than once, and in return, he had protected her when danger came too close. Do you remember the canyon trial? Ethan asked, a small smile playing on his lips. Lyra laughed. A soft, musical sound. How could I forget? That was one of our first real tests together. You almost fell into the river, and I almost had to catch you. You almost didn't have to, Ethan teased gently. But I guess it worked out. Lyra's eyes sparkled. It did. And look at us now. Stronger, wiser, and still together. The bond between them had grown steadily. They were no longer just human and assigned companion, they were a team. Ethan found himself seeking Lyra's opinions, valuing her judgment, and, without realizing it, enjoying her company in ways that went beyond survival. She had become a constant presence in his life. Someone whose small size belied a spirit that could match any danger or challenge the universe presented. Their next mission took them to the edge of the colony's explored territory, where alien wildlife had begun to encroach on the settlement. The council requested their assistance in mapping and monitoring the area. Ethan and Lyra set out early, moving together with practiced efficiency. Lyra darted ahead, scanning for hazards, while Ethan followed, keeping a careful watch on her and the surrounding terrain. They reached a narrow valley where the alien creatures were most active. Ethan crouched behind a boulder, whispering instructions to Lyra. We'll move slowly. You scout ahead, but stay within range. We need to map the area safely. Lyra nodded. Understood. I'll signal if anything changes. Minutes turned into hours as they navigated the valley. Lyra's small frame allowed her to slip through tight spaces and move silently, while Ethan's strength and knowledge ensured they could handle any encounter. When a pack of creatures appeared, they worked seamlessly. Lyra drew their attention with careful movements, guiding them away from Ethan, who used his agility and strategic thinking to distract and divert the predators. By the time they reached the far side of the valley, Ethan realized that his admiration for Lyra had deepened. He respected her intelligence, her courage, and her unwavering dedication. More importantly, he had grown to trust her, instinctively. Together, they were unstoppable, a human and a petite alien, united not by obligation, but by choice and mutual respect. As they rested on a sunlit cliff overlooking the valley, Ethan finally allowed himself to speak honestly. Lyra, I don't think I realized how much I needed someone until I met you. Lyra looked at him, her eyes wide and gentle. Needed someone? She asked, tilting her head. Yes, he said, his voice quiet but firm. I thought I could do everything alone. I thought needing someone made me weak. But being with you, I see it doesn't. It makes me stronger. I've learned more, survived more, and even enjoyed more than I ever could on my own. Lyra's small hand rested lightly on his. That is good, Ethan. That is what the Galactic Council hoped for. In a way, not just survival, but growth. You've learned to see the value of companionship, the power of trust, and the strength of unity. Ethan smiled, feeling a warmth that went beyond the physical comfort of the sun. Lyra, petite and seemingly fragile, had changed his life. She had turned a forced assignment into a partnership that felt natural, empowering, and necessary. Their journey back to the colony was quiet, peaceful even. The bond between them no longer needed words. It was evident in the way they moved, communicated silently, and anticipated each other's needs. When they arrived, the council members were waiting to congratulate them on their successful survey. Ethan accepted the praise, but his eyes kept drifting to Lyra, silently acknowledging that her contributions had been just as vital as his own. That evening, as they sat beside a fire in their shared quarters, Ethan looked at Lyra. Her small form curled comfortably beside him, the glow of the fire reflected in her eyes, making them seem even brighter than usual. "I've been thinking," he began, hesitant, "about the future, about us. I used to think assignments were burdens, but now I see them differently. I see that sometimes the right companion can change everything." Lyra smiled softly, tilting her head. "And do you think I am that companion?" Ethan took a deep breath. "I don't just think it, I know it. You've been by my side through dangers I never imagined, taught me lessons I didn't know I needed, and made me see the universe in ways I couldn't alone. I want us to stay together, not because it's required, but because I choose you." Lyra's eyes shimmered, and she leaned closer. "I choose you too, Ethan. Not because of rules, not because of the council, but because you've proven to be strong, kind, and worthy of trust. Together, we are more than a human and an assigned companion. We are a team, a family." Ethan's chest filled with a rare sense of joy. He had never imagined that a small alien, assigned to him as part of a program, could become so integral to his life. But now, he knew that Lyra was more than a partner. She was a friend, a confidant, and the one being he could rely on without hesitation. In the days that followed, Ethan and Lyra continued to explore the colony's territory. They mapped new regions, assisted colonists, and even trained new recruits in survival skills. The villagers admired their teamwork, marveling at how seamlessly they worked together, despite the obvious differences in size, species, and experience. Ethan noticed that he no longer felt the urge to prove himself alone. He had found balance in partnership, and it made him feel more confident, capable, and alive than ever before. One evening, as they watched the sun set over the horizon, Ethan spoke quietly. "Do you remember when I first met you? I didn't want an assigned companion. I thought it would limit me. But now, I can't imagine facing this world without you." Lyra's small hand reached for his. "And I can't imagine it without you, Ethan. The universe is vast and dangerous, but together, we can face anything. Trust, courage, and teamwork. These are stronger than any weapon, faster than any predator, and more enduring than any storm." Ethan smiled, a deep sense of peace settling over him. He had learned an important truth. Humans might need companions, but the right companion, no matter the size or species, could make all the difference. Lyra, petite, spirited, and fearless, had become his anchor, his guide, and his partner in every sense of the word. As night fell, they sat together under the stars, the alien sky stretching endlessly above them. Ethan realized that life had changed in ways he could never have predicted. He had faced dangers, conquered fears, and learned the value of trust. But most importantly, he had discovered the extraordinary gift of companionship, a gift he never expected, but one he would cherish for the rest of his life. And as he watched Lyra smile up at the sparkling constellations, Ethan knew one thing for certain. The assignment that had once felt like a burden had become the most meaningful part of his existence. Together, they were stronger, braver, and ready for whatever the universe might throw at them next. For Ethan and Lyra, the adventure was just beginning, and the future was theirs to face side by side, united not by duty, but by choice, respect, and the unbreakable bond they had forged through trust and courage.